And returning now to the developing story coming out of Lebanon, we reported at the top of the show that the IDF issued evacuation warnings to people in a southern suburb of Beirut. And now we see visuals here which have shown smoke billowing, with the IDF saying they have begun these operations, claiming that there were 4 areas, 4 buildings that were known to manufacture drones by Hezbollah. We have Ariel, I-24 Middle East correspondent, here with more details on what you've been able to glean from your sources. Yeah,
moments after Lebanese media reported Israeli airstrikes have begun in Beirut's southern suburbs, the IDF confirming that its Air Force has begun striking targets of Hezbollah's aerial unit, named Unit 127 in Beirut's southern suburbs, just a couple hours after it issued, or less than a couple hours after it issued, evacuation notices for 5 buildings in a few areas in Beirut's southern suburbs, saying that these are underground drone manufacturing sites. So now we see that these are live images right now from Beirut, with the smoke billowing from at least one of the strikes. According to reports, 2 strikes have taken place so far, but we anticipate at least 5, with Israel showing that it is continuing to go after Hezbollah's sites across Lebanon, whether it's in the south, in the Bekaa Valley, or even in the capital, Beirut.
Well, and as also you were mentioning earlier, I mean, in spite of this agreement, the Israeli Air Force, the IDF, is continuing to target infrastructure in places known to be strongholds of Hezbollah, whether there are operatives there or not. Can we assume that these locations, as they're going, they're doing this as they discover these locations, or is it more of a strategic? They find out a handful of different places and work accordingly, from what you think? Look,
this is intelligence that comes up constantly, but with regards to Lebanon, Israel has deep knowledge of Hezbollah's sites all across the country. It was, prior to October 7th, this was the main threat that Israel set its sights on. Intelligence-wise, that could also explain the blind side that it had in Gaza with Hamas. That is not the case here with Hezbollah in Lebanon. Deep understanding as to the ample sites that Hezbollah has across the country, and also deep in civilian population. These are sites, as you can see, this is heavily urban,
it's a very urban
area, but this is where Hezbollah puts its military sites, military infrastructure, trying to use international law against Israel, but I guess they didn't take their lesson in international law, because the same law allows Israel to strike these sites after giving warning, after providing, also giving warning shots. Everything that is happening by the book on the Israeli side. Hezbollah, once again, showing that it is cynically using its own Lebanese population as a human shield. And this comes at the heels of the visit by Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, to Beirut, to try and show that Iran is still trying to save whatever it can of its influence in Lebanon, but under the new Lebanese government, a new president, a new prime minister, who have gone out vocally against the existence of weapons outside the hands of the state, meaning Hezbollah. This is something that a climate, a very different climate in Lebanon, that also explains why we're not seeing daily reciprocation on the part of Hezbollah, because they have been, I won't say completely destroyed, but utterly degraded, and without the cloud of its former leader, Hassan Nasrallah, who was described not only as the most powerful man in Lebanon, but some even called him the most powerful man in Iran.
Wow.
That's just to indicate the level of the clout that he carried with him. With him out of the picture, this puts Hezbollah in a completely different reality, which also allows Israel to go on the offensive in a much more aggressive way, as we're seeing today, and as we've been seeing consistently since the ceasefire came into effect back in November of last year.
Also, now with the weekend approaching, the IDF isn't always so open about when they carry out, these types of attacks. So interesting to see that they are, that it is becoming public knowledge that they are issuing the evacuation orders. We've seen all of these cars and these traffic jams. Obviously, the Lebanese people taking this very seriously. This weekend, I guess it's possible that things could continue. Obviously, we don't know, but
look, as I said,
creating chaos amongst the people in Beirut.
As I said, on average, 2 strikes a day by Israeli forces on Lebanese territory. Obviously, when we're talking about the Lebanese capital with ample diplomatic presence from the international community, it is not the same as your hard to say, your regular targeted elimination of a Hezbollah operative on a motorcycle or a weapons depot somewhere deep in Baalbek in the Bekaa Valley. These are much higher profile strikes, and Israel goes to much more extensive lengths to issue prior warnings, to do these warning shots on the roof, dropping small armaments on the roofs of the building, taking all the precautions possible at the disposal of any military to go after these military targets that continue to threaten Israeli safety. Look, at the start of the war, over 100,000 residents of northern Israel evacuated. Only 60% returned because they know that as long as Hezbollah exists as an armed militia supported by Iran, there continues to be this threat. So what Israel here is trying to do is to send a message, obviously, first and foremost, to its own citizens, that it is continuously going after this threat. But with these strikes in Beirut, this is a substantial message also to the world, and Arab media they're all showing these live images right now as we speak of this smoky skyline of Beirut as an indication that these threats against Israel will not be tolerated any longer.
And with that, you were talking about the residents of the north. Many of them afraid to go back. People did start to go back before the summer. But this is why. Even if Hezbollah is not sending rockets every single day, this is why, would explain why it's hard for them to go back to their life and move on entirely, while there are still people very close at the border. They're going to continue to toy with the Israeli people,
right?
No matter at what level, not necessarily sending a rocket, but the fact that they're there despite this. The agreement that is going on now, clearly it's not cut and dry.
And we're talking right now about the 4th Israeli airstrike in Beirut. Obviously, when the IDF announced 5 buildings in various areas of Beirut's southern suburb. Hezbollah stronghold in Al-Hadath, in Harat Harek. These are just 2 of the areas where these buildings are located. So far, 4 strikes out of 5 buildings. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these buildings are struck more than once. That is often the case. And we could see also strikes elsewhere in Lebanon. This is just an indication as to the continuous threat posed by these existing Hezbollah infrastructure in Beirut, in southern Lebanon, and in the Bekaa Valley.
And we don't have a world reaction yet, but with the whole course of events, with President Trump still trying to push through some kind of diplomatic ties with various countries, we don't hear as much pushback from the international community over these types of operations as opposed to what is going on in Gaza. Can we expect any kind of input or reaction to what's going on?
So like I said, when it strikes in Beirut, these are higher profile, and they do bring upon condemnations from mainly the Arab world, Arab leaders, obviously Lebanese leadership, but there will be condemnations from Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the UAE, Jordan. This is expected. Who are we not going to hear condemnations from? from the body that oversees this ceasefire implementation, headed by an American general, albeit, but that is what counts. This is the body that ultimately oversees the implementation of the ceasefire, and by the fact that it hasn't issued a single public statement against these Israeli airstrikes, again, over 400 strikes since the beginning of the ceasefire, that is a clear indication, you could say a kosher stamp, that all these strikes are being taken, are conducted under the legitimacy of this existing ceasefire.